Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and we're going to do the breakdown for this weekend's MMA slate. Again, this is not the slate where I'm in the finals of that qualifier thing, that King of the Hill or whatever that's called. That's next weekend. This is a standard GPP slate, and it is it's kind of an ugly one. Ugly with respect to the fact that there aren't a lot of what they call key fights. You don't sometimes you usually get like 2 or 3 fights that have really strong inside the distance props that you really want to target. Sometimes you get like multiple fights with affordable fighters on both sides in situations like that. But this week it's a little ugly when it comes to that. So, like for example, the only fight that really has an inside the distance prop that's really worth mentioning, we'll go through them all, is this Dawkins Hawes fight. See, this one is only minus 140 over 1.5 rounds, and it's a minus 165 to be under 2.5. And that is by far I think the highest inside the distance prop, or the shortest inside the distance prop there is. So, I mean, look at some of these others. Harris Aguilera, barely, minus 130 under 2.5. Park fight, plus 120 under 2.5. Zachev fight, this fight, the Benoit fight, is canceled, by the way. This Klein fight, we're going to get to this in a second. This one, again, is minus 110 over 2.5. Dawkins, we talked about. Rothwell Lynn's, awful. Hebas Hill, awful. Ferreira Gillespie, awful. Well, we're going to get to something else in a minute. I mean, it's awful with respect to inside distance. All right, this one's okay. Rodrigo and Green. This is also a good. This is also one that you want to target because this is under 2.5 rounds of minus 290. So this one's a big one. So there's the Green fight as well as the Dawkins Hawes fight. Just to kind of finish it off, Magny, no. Cerrone fight, awful, and as is the women's main event. Minus 7 and 10 to go over 1.5 rounds. So the first thing you want to do, like I said, is you want to get exposure to both of these fights. I mean, it's with so few fights having that short inside the distance prop. I mean, you really need both of them. So I would definitely get some of both De Lima and Maurice Green, and I would definitely get some of both Dawkins and Hawes. And with that said, you should know that the majority of the vig for the inside the distance prop in the Dawkins Hawes fight is the Hawes side. It's because of Hawes's desire to finish early that brings that inside the distance prop down a little bit. But even still, I mean, I think Dawkins can certainly get there in the second round. But you probably want to lean a little more towards Hawes if you're playing this just to get exposure to that fight from the inside the distance prop, type of analysis. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you want to focus in on fights where if you want to get big scores, with the exception of finishing early, you want to get wrestlers and grapplers with high upside, because that's with the new scoring system. That's just the way it is. And one of those situations, well, the most extreme is going to be in this Gregor Gillespie fight. And the Gregor Gillespie fight is going to be really interesting because on the one hand, Gregor Gillespie is is known as one of the best wrestlers, if not, one of the top wrestlers in the entire league, so to speak. So his style is just very conducive to high DraftKings points. And yet, I also feel as though Ferreira is a good bit of leverage off of that. Because, what I just said is something that's not particularly earth-shattering, and everybody's going to be on that. And I do think that Gillespie is going to end up being really, really highly owned. So, yes, I'm going to get Gillespie, but I'm definitely going to get some of Ferreira too. I think that Ferreira could get a submission in this, from his back. And at that price, which we're going to get to, I think he is actually only 7,300. I mean, he rates as, to me, as a really live underdog, because one of the things is that there are other fighters that are going to be more popular underdogs than he will be. Like, for example, let me pull up my kind of like projections and ownership grid. Ferreira's like down on the list with respect to ownership here. Although, as I'm looking at this, he is going to be somewhat popular as far as underdogs go. Park will be a little more popular. Watterson, because the main event, is going to be extremely popular. I don't know why Green's not going to be popular. I don't know why Hill's not going to be popular. That's really interesting, because I was going to get to that one. All right, let's go back into the grid here for a minute. That's very strange. So we're going to go through the fights here. I'll let you know who I like and where I'm going with respect to my GPPs. So this Aguilera-Harris fight, I think this is a very interesting fight because Harris is one of those fighters coming up from the lower series, and I think that the public usually favors them a little bit more over the kind of the bad UFC fighter, right? If that makes any sense, because there's a little more hope and things like that. And Harris does bring with him a great amount of cardio, meaning that he can go on forever and he can wrestle. So that's a pretty decent combination. But Harris can also strike as well. But Aguilera has a lot of power. So I feel as though, even though this inside the distance prop is nothing great, I think that I want to get both pieces of this fight also. I don't think Aguilera is going to be particularly high owned. Like right here, they only have him like 18%, which for MMA is very, very, very low owned. So this is a fight that I'm probably going to get. Both sides of, honestly. Also, it's the first fight of the night, and I do feel as though the first fight of the night usually gets, I don't say ignored, but it usually has like the worst fighters. So a lot of people don't focus in on that. So I think that the ownerships on both these guys are going to be artificially low. This other one, this is interesting. This Jun Young Park. What was interesting about this guy is that he fought a couple of fights back, and I don't know why very few people are talking about this. I want to pull up his board here. Wanted to look at the last few. Okay, I think it was during this. I think it was the Barrial fight. So what was interesting is that was it this fight? I forget which one it was. It was this one. Okay, right. Against Phillips. This was really interesting because he had 260 strikes. Okay, and I think that there was some some dispute over how many points he should have gotten or something like that, because they didn't give him credit for any significant strikes. Yeah, that's what it was. There was 10 significant strikes and 260 strikes. So what this is doing is this is showing 128. He would have had 128 fantasy points given the current system, but they only gave him very few. And if there's a big uproar on Twitter about that. So now with this new scoring system, if he could still get those kind of like those multiple strikes that aren't particularly significant, it's going to be worth like a lot more. So I'm into that. I definitely like Park as kind of a live underdog there. Moving up, Benoit, this one's off. Klein Trizano, I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore the highest favorite on the card, right? So on the one hand, he's the biggest favorite. On the other hand, the inside the distance prop is not so great. I mean, it's fine. But again, with not that many fights rating to be incredibly high scoring, I think that that a score that otherwise might not win a GPP with this 9,300 guy might be enough on a card like this. So I do like him. I think that he's a good favorite. I think he's a good guy to put in. He could certainly get a first round knockout. But even if he doesn't, I think I don't say his floor, because he'd obviously lose, but his floor of just basically picking the guy apart for 3 rounds and getting like 95 points or something like that, I think that that's fine, on a slate like this. Hawes Dawkins, I already mentioned, would take both sides of that fight. Rothwell Linz is going to be very tempting because they're heavyweights, and that 80. They're both, I think, 8,100 or something like that. But I am of the belief that this. Oh wait, this is out too. Linz will no longer fight him. That's card also. Alrighty, so that one's dead. I'm very glad they didn't do the contest this week because we're probably going to end up with a bunch of ties. All right, Hill Rebus. Hill is an extremely live underdog here at 7,100. That's the best I can say about that. I find it impossible to believe that she's going to be as low owned as she looks to be. So that's the best I'm going to say. I don't want to play the other side, really. I'll probably have a sprinkle, but I think Hill is a very, very live underdog here. And again, I'm not going to build a whole lineup or anything like that. I can put a couple spots in there, right? That makes sense. There's already 3 underdogs in here. So that's that. Moving on, I mentioned already Gillespie, Ferreira. I think both sides of this are worth playing. Maurice Green, Rodrigo, both these sides worth playing. I think if I'm going to fade something, maybe I'll fade the Jeff Neal Magny fight because Neal is 9,100 and he's less of a favorite than, say, what's his name from before? Klein. But he doesn't, I don't think, possess the same amount of knockout upside because Magny's not bad. And Neal is much more measured. In other words, he won't throw a lot of volume. He'll try to pick his shots or whatever. He's pretty good, but I would be underweight him, certainly relative to Klein. Cerrone, Morono. The problem with Morono took this on 6 days' notice. I can't take a guy on 6 days' notice. If anything, I would play Cerrone. And with respect to the main event, you know, both these two guys are going to be both these women are going to be popular for good reason. I mean, you have that 5-round fight. You have that floor of worst case scenario. If you take the favorite, for example, you know, you probably go 5 rounds. And if you look at the inside the distance prop, you'll see that it's, you know, fight goes decisions is a -205 favorite. So, you know, you play either of these girls, I mean, you're going to be in business. So I think that you probably want to make sure to get at least one of them. I don't have much of a lean either way. I think they both have shots, and I wouldn't go 100% either of them. So it's unfortunately, it's a very small card now with, you know, because Benoit's out, and I presume that that Rothwell's not going to get another Rothwell's not going to get another opponent. But I think that if you go along with what I said and follow the breakdown, I think you'll be able to come up with some good lineups. I don't know if anybody could take this down on their own this week, but you know what? I wouldn't mind chopping with a couple of people. That's about all I have for this week's MMA slate. Good luck, and that's it.